Hey folks, and welcome to my video covering the NES games of 1987. This is quite the step up from the 1986 video. That year only had 19 games to cover. 1987 has 53. I did it though. Here's the proof. Look at that runtime. If this is your introduction to this project of mine, welcome. Late in 2022, I had a wild idea to play and review every single game released on the NES, and this project is its execution. Each video breaking things up into the years of the NES's life cycle. If you haven't watched my 1985 or 1986 videos, I recommend that you do. They're not needed to follow this video, but it does show the evolution of the console, my approach to tackling this project, as well as the highs and lows of my journey through it. 1987 is a special year. Not only does Nintendo release more great games, surprise surprise, they kicked off the Legend of Zelda and Metroid franchises. Capcom and Konami do the same with Mega Man and Castlevania, and there are so many shoot-'em-ups. I'm not a fan of the genre, but I had to learn to like them if I was going to get through this year without being miserable. And you know what? Most of them were pretty good games. Spoiler alert. Finally, some games that have been popularized by the internet as being, quote, terrible, were released on the NES this year. Are they as bad as they're made out to be? That would be telling. Why don't we get started covering the games and you can find out for yourselves. As with the previous videos, I've played each game for around 10 minutes, written my thoughts on it, ranked them, and then after all the games are covered, we'll count down my favorite games of the year. Each game review is about 1 to 3 minutes long, depending on what I had to say about it. Feel free to use the chapters to jump around, take breaks, or watch the whole thing in one go. Viewer's choice. Now, let's kick off the NES games of 1987 with Trojan! Trojan is a game I had to warm up to. It has a lot of interesting ideas, but it does not tolerate mistakes. The enemies never stop coming. I've noticed that a lot with older games, how instead of designing enemy encounters in specific parts of a stage, there will be a continuous torrent of fodder coming in from the left and right. Oh, there are specifically placed foes as well, such as the TNT and crossbow guys, but it's always a case of moving a little to the right before turning to the left to take care of everyone coming in on that side, before making your way to the boss inch by a bloody inch. But inch by inch is how these games seem to work. On my first go, I got to level 2 and died in the sewer fighting Mr. Pillbug. On my next try, I got to the level 2 boss and couldn't get past his boomerang defenses. And finally, I was able to get past him with not much lives to spare, before dying to another Pillbug in the new canyon section of the game. The sewers are where the super jump power-up is, which allows you to be able to take out the guys up top. But it didn't take more than a hit or two before I lost that power-up, wondering why I wandered into the sewers in the first place. You have a sword and shield, and you can slash and block. A lot of the projectiles I could slash out of the air as well, and it's cool to have a blocking mechanic in such an early game, especially when attacks come in low and you have to adjust. That was my difficulty fighting the boomerang guy. The red guys will also throw a disarming bomb, which will leave you with just your fists and feet until you come across your weapons again. The mini-bosses and bosses will test your mastery of these systems, and slowly learning how to play was how I was able to keep making progress after each attempt. So yeah, a neat little game that I am more fond of after writing about than I was while playing it. I can't really recommend it, but it's not too bad. Another pro wrestling game. And it's not that great. Well, it's better than the other two. Also, it says 1986 on the title screen, but the Wikipedia NES game list I'm using has it released in the US in March of '87. I don't know who to believe! There will probably be many discrepancies like this as we move forward, but I'm sure that in the end I'll cover everything. Anyways, this one plays a lot better than the other two. Each wrestler has the same base moves with 1 or 2 special attacks. You have to weaken your opponent enough with the base stuff before you can deploy the heavy hitters. When I finally worked out what I was doing, I won 3 matches in a row with a pile driver. Remember when pile drivers were finishing moves? I also discovered this game is where the infamous "A winner is you" meme comes from. I wonder how far I could have gotten. I probably need to know a lot more of the ins and outs, but I gotta say that the idea of using weaker attacks to build up to stronger ones makes me want to go and play Fire Pro Wrestling. Now that's a great wrestling game. Slalom is Rare's first Nintendo game, and it's pretty good. I mean, who doesn't want to have a nice view of NES-era pixelated skier booty? Slalom's got it in spades. The music is banging, even if it does get interrupted every time you hit an obstacle and take a tumble in the snow. I was able to press the jump button and land on my skis, but I never learned why that happened sometimes and not others. The point of the game is to choose a mountain path and make it to the bottom of each successive slope before the time runs out. Ski between the flags and hold down the up button for acceleration while avoiding everything in your way. It's fast, fun, and harder than it looks. After losing on the 3rd slope of the first game mode, I decided to try the harder mode, and on 2 slopes in a row, I skidded through the finish line just as my timer ran out. I think by then I'd gotten the hang of the game because I managed to fly through the next slope, appropriately titled The Whoosh, with time to spare. This is the first game from this year to put a smile on my face while playing it. I was not able to score a single point playing volleyball. I read the manual after losing 15-0, and while that informed me as to the game having a lot of nuance within its simplistic controls, I still was not able to score a point. The best I could do was rally my blockers together to stop a spike and to actually spike the ball into the opponent's court. They caught it, but I still whooped like I scored a point. You have to celebrate your victories. The problem I had with the game is that unlike, say, NES Baseball, there is no automatic player adjustment. Sometimes your people are in the right spot to return the ball, but often they are not. And since you only get about a second or so to make a decision, and your whole team moves as one, I'd miss most returns. Often multiples in a row. It became comical how I just could not get anything to happen. I'd miss the 5th serve in a row and angrily say, "Oh, of course!" So yeah, I did not enjoy my time with volleyball. There might be a cool sports game here, but I do not have the patience to uncover it. Russian Attack! Get it? Man, the music to level 1 is great. I also love the background art. This is just one of many military side-scrollers from the 80s. You're drop behind enemy lines, complete your mission, and defeat the enemy. And all they've given you is this piddly little knife. The enemies don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming from both sides of the screen. There's a foe that jump kicks, and then there are these beige dorks lying on the ground that drop what looks to be a rocket launcher when you kill them. You get 3 shots, and I found it too annoying to try and seek them out, so I stuck to my knife. The gun might have been useful for the boss, which is just waves of the jump kickers, but I did finally manage to make my way through. In a dick move, it seems every time you die the game puts you back a checkpoint. Level 2 has the same enemies, but they're wearing different clothes, and now that they've got guards in a tower shooting at me, I had no chance. Like Trojan, I got a little further each time I played, but I had more than my fill after 10 minutes. Here's how my time with track and field went. I played properly to start with, button mashing my heart out to have my guy run as fast as he could. I qualified for the dash, hurdles, long jump, and javelin. Then I got to skeet shooting. It's part rhythm game, part keeping an eye on both sides of the screen. I found it very hard. I did not qualify. I tried game mode B, but the qualifying times were even stricter, so I looked at the emulator options to find out how to play with autofire. It turns out I already had it mapped to my controller. Holding down the button and watching my guy sprint as fast as possible was gratifying. I wish I had tried this out back when I played 1942. In my Atari video, one covering Decathlon, I mentioned that I had Track and Field 2 on the NES growing up, and that if I ever played another track and field button masher again, it'd be too soon. As track and field button mashers go, I'm impressed. Variety in events, it looks nice, and the Olympic theme song is a lot better than the Decathlon one, and you would hope that's the case on more advanced hardware. Track and Field doesn't contain as many events as its sequel, and I dislike how I can't choose an event individually for practice, having to play and qualify each event in order. But all in all, this is pretty good. Although I might just be in a good mood, because I know I have access to autofire for these kinds of games in the future. Yikes! This might be one of the worst ports I've ever played. I've never been a fan of Burgertime, but I've always enjoyed the absurdity of the premise. Climbing ladders and walking over giant patties in order to create cascading towers of burger monstrosities, all the while avoiding the eggs and sausages who are trying to stop you. If you have some pepper left over, you can halt them in their tracks or squish them with a falling burger condiment. It's so odd, and from what I remember, pretty fun. This port contained none of that. The onslaught of the fighting foodstuffs was too much to handle. Now, if I had the grace of Pac-Man, that's one thing. Being able to swing up a ladder or to the side of a platform as easily as moving direction in a maze. But that is not the case at all. Burgertime on the NES is stiff. Rigor mortis stiff. I'd run past a ladder with a sausage hot on my tail and press up to climb it. The cook would halt and I'd get tagged. You have to be exactly on the ladders or exactly on the platforms to be able to move between the two. The game did not feel good to control, and that meant I got my ass handed to me all the frickin' time. I managed to get to level 2, which has a different layout, but that just made things worse. If I could move smoothly, if there were less foods following me, and if that one song playing over and over again wasn't driving me insane, I think I could enjoy Burgertime. As it is, cooking my own burgers seems a much easier proposition. This is the first knocked it out of the park game of 1987. My god, is Castlevania still a delight to play. It looks great, it sounds great, and it's fun to control. Compared to some other games I've played, the stiffness of Simon Belmont is deliberate. It feels fair. Part of the character. You have to learn the limitations. The jump, the knockback, which sub-weapons are appropriate for where you are in the level, and if you do die, which candles hold the whip upgrades to get you back to full power. Each screen feels like its own mini-challenge, especially in level 2 once the Medusa heads were introduced, along with some jumps over a bottomless pit. What ended up ending me were these one-hit kill crushers. The hitboxes felt a tad too strict, but I put it down to not yet learning the limitations of what the game is. I think we're able to forgive any perceived issues of a game if we're having a good time with it, and I am shocked with how enjoyable I find playing Castlevania 36 years later. Oh, the memories! The music of Ikari Warriors took me back to my childhood. My friend Hillary at the other end of our street had this game. We played two-player a lot. I had forgotten how hard the bloody game is. Okay, if you can survive long enough to make it to a tank, you have a chance to travel a long way. But then again, it's all too easy for the tank to get hit by a grenade or a bazooka, leaving you to flee and continue on foot. It's tough to shoot the enemies coming in at an angle, and worst of all, you only have a set number of bullets unless you can find more out in the field. At least you have a huge number of grenades to fall back on, as well as all the different kinds of weapons that drop from the pink enemies, but it's not ideal. After a couple rough starts, I said to myself, I think I'd rather be playing Commando, and I did not enjoy playing Commando. Now, if memory serves, there are 2 more Ikari Warriors sequels on the platform that I have to look forward to. Oh goody. Athletic World uses the Power Pad peripheral. The emulator has a solution for such games, using the keyboard to simulate the pads you would be stepping on, but I couldn't get the thing to work well, and didn't have the patience to keep trying, so we'll be moving on. I sure hope there aren't any other Power Pad only games coming up, Dave says, knowing that there likely will be. Ah, that iconic music. I remember that no matter how often I played Kid Icarus as a kid, I could never get past the second level. All these years later, the same is true, and I found it a feat just to reach that second level. What helped is when I realized I could shoot upwards. That makes those flying orange brain slugs easier to deal with. Kid Icarus feels like a game of secrets. Knowing which doors to go into, where to farm currency, and what to buy. Pausing the game brings up a screen that suggests an RPG element in terms of upgrading weapons, health, and obtaining other items. It likely makes the eternal climb that much easier. I still like the way this looks and sounds, but its novelty is paired with how unforgiving it can be. I think those that rose to the challenge and completed Kid Icarus would feel pretty good about their accomplishment, even if it were undertaken today. The game also has one of the best depictions of the Grim Reaper. Take that, Manny Calavera! What kind of sick game shows off a bunch of bombs to collect, but then doesn't let the player use them? Mighty Bomb Jack! It confused me for the longest time. Actually, most of Mighty Bomb Jack confused me. I thought the bombs were to deal with the enemies, but no. They're collectibles. But then in the bonus stage, the fuses start to fizz, so I wonder if you die if a bomb goes off, or if it will just explode everything around it. It might be a good way to deal with the enemies, especially because they appear out of nowhere and then morph into birds or flames that chase you down. Littered around the levels are treasure chests, and eventually I worked out that I could change color. One color opened special chests, another allowed me to walk into the sides of chests to open them instead of having to bounce on top of them, and then a third would turn all the enemies into coins. And let's talk jumping. Jack's jump is high! The height can get in the way when trying to be precise, and there were still ledges that were just out of my reach. The vertical levels are fun for that reason. Some stages are short and full of monsters, and others allow more leisurely jumping around. There are also multiple exit points in most levels, leading to different stages. What a fun little video game! You know, once the confusion wears off. I don't think I ever played more than a screen or two of Rygar. I remember he had the shield on a string, and the backgrounds looked amazing. That's still true, and the music is pretty epic too. One thing that's funny is that it's faster and less fraught to jump over enemies than it is to stop and attack them. So I was climbing trees, and I entered a door with a guru who gave me a cryptic message. This guy is everywhere. Cryptic messages all round. I made my way to the top of the mountain and found I needed a crossbow to progress, so I went exploring. I also pressed the start button and it pulled up a screen where skills could be upgraded and there were slots for new weapons and items. Wait, is this a side-scrolling proto-Zelda? The comparison is even more apt because I went into a door and the game shifted perspective on me. In that top-down zone, I managed to grab the grappling hook before my time was up. What a fascinating game! I was curious to see how far I could get. When you die, the game respawns the last level change. I don't know if you keep the items you've amassed once you die, but wouldn't it be cool if you did? Alongside the visuals, the game itself suggests possibilities, and I like that. This is my favorite game music of 1987 so far. Fun K. I started to play Section Z normally, and then decided not to screw around with my finger rapidly tapping the buttons, relying on the autofire. This is a side-scrolling shooter like Gradius, but one button shoots to the right, and the other button orients you to shoot to the left. You have 20 hit points to withstand an onslaught of bullets, but running into any enemy is an instant death. Groups of foes drop weapon upgrades and pellets to revitalize your energy. Standard shooter stuff, right? Well, let me tell you what makes Section Z interesting. At the end of each little section or level, you have a choice, up or down. They will take you to different sections, and choosing incorrectly will bring you back to Section 1. So, on top of survival and upgrades, part of mastering the game is memorizing the correct sequence of exits to take in order to make it to the end. The difficulty isn't related to the section either. I didn't try Section 2 until later in my play and found it one of the trickiest areas due to the sawtooth enemies exploding into a ring of bullets. So you have to watch out for all of that madness, which is slowing down processing, while trying not to bump into anything. Levels with giant mechs or an abundance of turrets on the floor and ceiling paled in comparison. I enjoyed my time with Section Z. It looks nice, that first track is a banger, and it feels that with enough dedication, it wouldn't be too tricky to make it to the end. I could be completely wrong, and the difficulty eventually spikes through the wazoo, but at least with what I played, I was impressed. The thing that I dislike about puzzle games of this era is there are always monsters that the player has to avoid. Solomon's Key is a neat idea. Use your block powers to get the key, make it to the door, and if you're feeling frisky, grab the bell to release the fairy. I get why the enemies are there. They make things tricky, exercising a little more brain power to make it through the level. And I imagine that once the player becomes used to how the game works, the enemies are trivial. But still, I don't like them. After my first attempt, where I got stuck on level 3, I went and read the manual. It seems there are a lot of advanced techniques, as well as the ability to acquire new magic. It's the manual that told me what the bells were. The manual also said there were lots of other secrets that the player would have to discover for themselves. I could see each new discovery bringing with it a sense of accomplishment. But seeing I was already stuck on level 3 of this single-screen puzzle game, I don't like my chances of getting too much further without assistance. I think it was until my 30s that I discovered the difference between Arkanoid and Breakout. By my understanding, Arkanoid is Breakout with power-ups. I love Breakout, and I love Arkanoid. Sadly, my attempts to play this NES port met with difficulty. Apparently the game came with a paddle controller, so I had to troubleshoot why I couldn't control the paddle with my D-pad. The emulator emulates the paddle controller with the mouse. The problem is that I used two screens on my PC, and when my mouse floated over to the other screen, the paddle stopped moving, and sudden jolts trying to get the movement back would arbitrarily pause the game, screwing up my rebounds. For brief glimmers of time, I got to play the game ideally, and it's those brief moments that I'd like to talk about. Not only are there power-ups to help you break the blocks, but there are enemies that can change the trajectory of your ball. They like to float down towards the paddle, where they can cause more havoc. It's best to try and destroy them at the top of the screen. The power-ups are great, and it's interesting to see which ones stack on top of each other, and which ones replace each other. The best combo I came across was slowing down the ball and then picking up multi-ball. For a short period of time, I was able to contend with all three balls. Not so at normal speed. Like when it happens in pinball, I get overwhelmed and lose all the extras very quickly. The levels are also intriguing. The silver bricks take a few hits, so in level 2 there's only one regular brick on the bottom row. If you can angle your ball to go through the space left, you can sit back and rack up the points. I was never able to make it happen, but it makes me want to see what other fun combinations the designers came up with. Sadly, because of my controller problems, I wasn't able to make it past stage 2. I'd love to play this the way it's meant to be played. It shows such promise. Well, Athena looks nice. Cute girl character sprite, vibrant woodlands, catchy song, and the enemies drop weapon upgrades. What could go wrong, right? It's funny how it's the little things that can make or break a game. If Athena didn't relentlessly spawn its enemies, if the hitboxes were a little easier to parse, and if I could work out how to pull off a regular jump or a high jump on purpose, I would have enjoyed Athena a lot more. On my last run, I discovered that a lot of the level's dirt blocks can be destroyed, and it looks like there's secrets hiding in them there dirt. I managed to get a shield off the guys that reminded me of the Yellow Devil from Mega Man, and right before the boss, I got that wascally archer, and his bow was just what I needed to start to whittle the boss's HP down. I didn't get there, and of course, each death throws you back to the start of the level. Yeah, I could see Athena being really fun with a little fine-tuning. I have memories of liking elevator action as a kid, but that is not the case now. It's definitely a cool premise. Descend an entire skyscraper with multiple elevators and escalators, trying to steal art or secret documents, I'm not sure which, while shooting an army's worth of enemies. Are they residents? Are they spies? The manual may tell me, but seeing as the game is very easy to figure out, I never read it. Maybe that was a mistake. After the first time I got to the basement, I got sent back up. I must not have collected enough valuables from the red doors. On my final attempt, I went in every door, snagging a bonus as the car zoomed away. The problem is how fragile your life is. Any bullet can take you down, and while that's true for the enemies as well, I found a lot of my deaths were being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When you enter a red door, you stay there for a short while, allowing enemies to get the drop on you as you exit. They'll often fire wildly past the door while you're inside. The final stretch can be hazardous as well, with all the elevators blocking shots until one side gets lucky. While I enjoy the premise, I found the execution a tad too annoying to leave with a favorable impression. I'm guessing because you play a ninja, what with the swords and shurikens and the like, that the game is called The Legend of Kage and not The Legend of Kage. What a delight this is. There is thunder in the background, you can climb and jump off the tops of trees, and you can parry incoming ninja stars with your sword. Kapwang! For the most part, I was frustrated by how easy it was to die, how enemies would appear out of nowhere, how they would use their swords to parry my attacks, and how I didn't understand how to get through the first stage. Eventually, it all clicked. Having the sword slashing at all times is the way to deal with the majority of attacks. And for those fireball freaks and any ninja outside your slash radius, a well-placed shuriken will seal the deal. As running to the edge of the screen in both directions did nothing, I guessed that the game was about points. At certain point thresholds, the enemies will drop a ball that will change your color and make your throwing stars bigger. It allows you to get hit more than once. There is also a magic spell that will decimate anything approaching you for what feels like an eternity, but it is a great way to rack up points. Eventually, I must have satisfied the level requirements, because it changed to an outer walls motif beside a stream. From there, I was jumping up the side of a castle, and then I was in the inner sanctum. I had spent so many attempts just understanding how the game worked, and suddenly I was cutting a line right through it. Sadly, I could get no further than that fourth stage. I don't really think there's much to The Legend of Kage, but damn if it doesn't present itself well. And sometimes, that's enough. The first thing that struck me playing Metroid all these years later is how alien it looks. The second thing is how great the music is. And then how nice Samus feels to control. This is one of those total package games. I could never get too far as a kid, not understanding the benefit of using paper to map out where I've been and where I might need to go. But in my teen years, I beat the game on an emulator with a walkthrough, and even then it was a hard-fought victory. Metroid can be brutal. Finding yourself in a zone you're not adequately prepared for can spell disaster. And getting hit can trigger a chain effect of continued hits that results in either a significant health decrease or death, especially when falling into hazards. As a kid, I always referred to it as falling into the ketchup or mustard. Those condiments are deadly. In this session, I ventured too far too quickly and then died on my way back trying to use the infinitely spawning bugbirds to fill up my health. But I didn't have the rhythm that once made topping up my resources so easy, and I died and was sent back to the start of the game. It's so easy to get lost in Metroid, to feel alone against a hostile world, and to slowly piece it together and emerge victorious. Most tend to consider Super Metroid the crown jewel of the series, and I'm among them, but even my memories of how frustrating the original could be didn't damper just how engaged I was returning to Metroid after all this time. Like Super Mario Bros., I think Metroid is an NES game that still holds up all these years later. I'd forgotten that the annoying beeping sound when you're low on hearts came from the first game in the series. What can I even say about The Legend of Zelda? Well, to start, the overworld music is great. The dungeon music can get repetitive, but that's not true of the dungeons themselves. They're fun to explore. I managed to clear out the first one before I stopped playing. Once I got the map, I methodically went from screen to screen clearing every enemy before moving on. The game remembers screens you've cleared, and not only did I find a bow with no arrows, A moblin dropped the boomerang, which freezes enemies in their tracks. I almost didn't make it past the boss, not knowing when it was safe to move in for a head stab, but I kept my wits about me and eventually won the day. It's thanks to my childhood memories that I remember where Dungeon 1 is. I'm sure the manual gives hints, and if I recall, the game came with a foldable map. But if you didn't have access to either of those, you could still make it through. It would just take more exploration and experimentation. In 2023, I played through Breath of the Wild and started playing Tears of the Kingdom, games whose design philosophies were built off of this original outing. There is definitely a connection in terms of not really knowing what's around the next corner, how dangerous the overworld can be, and that there are secrets everywhere. Despite its open world, The Legend of Zelda encourages a linear progression through its dungeons being numbered. But one of the game's strengths is that you don't have to complete them in order. It's having its structure cake and eating it too. This is another favorite from my emulation days. I was actually singing the music while playing. There's just something about the way the game works. The faux 3D landscape, how running into pillars yields rewards and danger if you're not careful, the thrill of dodging through the enemies, weaving left and right forever, and of course, the low gravity jump. How high you can go, but also how you can control your ascent and descent with the jump button. There are sections where a small jump is needed before a large leap, and instead of being committed to a large leap and dying, I can release the button and land safely before resuming flight. This extends to the pace of the game as well. The game is actually a bit slow, and that can be changed by holding up on the D-pad. Of course, there are sections where you want to slow down, like the bonus stages where you might want to collect all the stars. Each level is split in 4 sections, and there's a Space Harrier-esque boss fight at the end. Level 2 seems to be on the moon, and I ran out of time in one segment because of these blasted hamburger helper mascots halting my progress. One thing I want to mention is that the 3D in the title is not just referring to the level perspective. If you press select and have a pair of 3D glasses, you can enjoy the game in 3D! I recorded a small section with the effect on just to show it off. It really hurt my eyes to play that way. You have been warned. The last 4 games in a row have been great. I guess my luck had to change sooner or later. It's not that Deadly Towers is bad. I actually like how the game gives you a password upon each death, letting you restart with everything you've collected. Sure, all that I was able to find was money and upping my max health, but I imagine as one travels through the game, being able to pick right back up with all your items at your current power level is a relief. The problem is how easy it is to die. Every screen is full of monsters in strange configurations. Each one takes a varying number of strikes to put down, and sometimes little dragons will whisk past or fire will rise from below. Sure, there is never a dull moment, but it means every single step is fraught with peril. Fraught, I say! The game is one of exploration. It didn't take me too long to find the rooms containing max health upgrades, as most directions led to nowhere. I was starting to map out the way forward, killing a dragon to access a new area, but even though I was collecting max health and money, I felt I was making little progress. Early on, I got pushed off a ledge and fell into what looked like a dungeon, igniting a chain reaction of enemy knockbacks that pushed me down a few rooms until I died. I tested so many ledges to see if there were similar secrets. A restart was all I ever received for my troubles. Deadly towers indeed. Man, do I suck at basketball this much? Well, yes, but I used to be pretty good at the video games, damn it. Double Dribble is showing off what it can do on the NES, with its packing the stadium intro, music cues, and special animation for a sick dunk. Did you know that the animation can play and you can still miss the shot? Yep, that happened to me countless times. After watching the computer dunk on me so frequently, I was excited to pull off some of my own, but I had more misses than hits. With my normal shots too. I know there's a trick to releasing the shoot button after pressing it, but it felt like I had just picked a team that had garbage stats. There were a lot of little annoyances too, like how I'd always be fouled for pushing, giving my opponent free points. I even once dunked into an out of bounds. Double Dribble is very well put together, and I'm sure it's fun once you know what you're doing, but I'm happy to leave it on the court. There's a lot I dislike about Lode Runner. I dislike how the game pans across the whole stage before each attempt. I dislike that I can't seem to pan the stage myself and would often be caught unawares by an enemy in my blind spot. And I dislike how the enemies can pick up gold, so you have to wait for them to drop it or force them to. What I do like is because of how the enemy pathing works, even when you've, quote, solved a stage, running it can be both tricky and exciting because you never quite know where the enemies are going to come from. Oh, I have no doubt high-level play involves manipulating them to go where you want them to, but I'm talking about new players here. Another positive is the rush of exhilaration I felt, escaping from certain death by tunneling through the platform I was standing on. I would love to see if the game starts to incorporate similar gameplay tricks with these simple mechanics, but I can't get over how quickly death can come and how long I have to wait until I can try again. Raid on Bungeling Bay is a cool concept. You're a helicopter trying to take out the enemy's factories. The manual boasts that the game world is 100 times bigger than the single screen. Wowzers! It's also the first video game by SimCity creator Will Wright. Cool! In execution, it's okay. Meets expectations! The trick is to check out all the surrounding islands, take out the boats, tanks, turrets, and radar, and drop bombs on the factories that create them. If you run out of bombs or get too damaged, hightail it back to the aircraft carrier to refuel before resuming the mission. My problem was I was never able to blow up a factory. There's a lag or inconsistency dropping the bombs, and no matter how dead on I seemed to be, which admittedly wasn't often, those factories kept on factoring. At least flying around was cool, with the up and down buttons changing speed and left and right rotating the craft. I guess Bungeling Bay is going to have to stay unrated. For now. Damn, this is a fine-looking boxing game. It's kind of a bitch to play though. I was getting massacred. I tried the ranking mode after failing my attempts at training before realizing I could pump numbers into my stats before the rad began. You would think this would give me an advantage. Nope. Even with a 9 in punching, the CPU seemed to always be one step ahead of me. No matter what type of punch I threw, I couldn't dent their health, and I was never quick enough with the dodge button to avoid damage myself. Not only that, but many times I'd be knocked on my ass while still having health left. It looked spectacular, but I was annoyed that no matter what I tried, I couldn't seem to come to grips with how the game played. Part of it is the rotation of the character. You can only throw punches or dodge when looking left, right, up, or down. The D-pad will transition you between these states and then move you along the axis once you're there. The upcoming boxing pun is unintentional, but I could never find my footing, and could never execute the awesome-looking combos that the computer was able to hit me with so effortlessly. Still, the game looks great, and I enjoyed playing it a lot more than most of the games so far. SkyKid is cute. That's about the only positive thing I have to say about it. Neat idea, picking up a bomb and then trying to hit the target, avoiding the fire of planes, tanks, and anti-aircraft guns. But as a plane, there is a surprising limit to the player's maneuverability and ability to avoid incoming fire. There's an evasive action button that is out of commission if you're carrying the bomb, as that's the drop bomb button. But evasive action locks you into a loop, and too often I would end my dodge and be hit an instant later. Sometimes I'd get behind a plane, they'd take evasive action and then slam into me. Other times, when trying to avoid the planes, I'd be at the mercy of the tanks or anti-aircraft cannons, and if I was lucky enough to dodge one, that luck did not strike twice. SkyKid is charming, but I wish some of that charm had rubbed off on making it easier to play. When Spelunker first started, I thought, oh, this looks cool. I loved crystal caves as a kid, so I was looking forward to exploring a mine and collecting treasure. Unfortunately, this is one of those games where if you're a pixel off your jump, you will die. Also, I think our miner doesn't have any knees because a waist-high fall will kill him. There are bombs and ropes to collect, and the miner has some sort of ray gun or drill, but I never found a use for it. I think I had to get a blue key to make my way through a blue door, but I could never find a way to not die long enough to make it happen. This is also one of those games where if you're on a screen for more than a few seconds, a ghost shows up. Come to think of it, isn't this just proto-Spelunky? I do love the premise, and if it wasn't so strict about every input, I think I'd enjoy myself. But Spelunker seemed determined to show me a bad time. I remember Spy Hunter from my childhood. Firing a gun from your car is the theme to Peter Gunn Plays. How cool. I forgot just how fiddly it is. If you're going too slow, it's very easy for the bulletproof cars to run you off the road. But if you're going too fast, you'll crash into everything. When entering a new area after the road splits, you have the ability to drive in a weapons truck and get either a smokescreen, an oil slick, or missiles, which are used against the helicopter. I never saw the missiles. I thought I must be playing wrong, because I couldn't understand how to survive for more than a couple of minutes. The manual wasn't that much help, but along with its knowledge, I must have started to feel out how to play, because I was getting better at switching speeds and lasting a little longer. Not enough to make any difference, but longer. Yeah, my memory played a trick on me with this one. Thanks, younger Dave. Sqoon is a side-scrolling space shooter under the sea. What a cute little submarine. What a long intro before the action gets underway. Having had to restart a few times, I did appreciate the reprieve, but I also wanted to get back into the action. It took about 3 attempts until I figured out what I had to do. Check this out. By dropping bombs on these underwater outposts, you free the humans captured there. Be sure to collect them before the orcas swimming alongside you do. I thought they were my friends, but after seeing one chomp down, I didn't feel as bad about accidentally shooting them with missiles. Then, to replenish your fuel, you need to call the rescue ship. How do you do this, you ask? You must bomb a crab. That's right. The crab will turn into a beacon, but only for like a second, so be quick. Then the ship will appear. Rise to the surface, let the humans out, and you get enough fuel to continue just that little bit longer. The problem is the crab never appeared when I needed it most, and trying to hit it and collect the beacon in a quick fashion meant I took my eyes off all the other enemies and got hit. Not only will one hit kill you, but gently caressing the ocean floor will do the same. I'm enjoying the premise of a lot of the NES games of 1987, but more and more I find myself frustrated. The game lowering in my esteem because of its choices in regards to difficulty. Sqoon's convoluted game loop, its unforgiving nature, and how long it takes to start back up again after a game over definitely did its best to sour my opinion of it. This is another Power Pad game. I spent a little more time trying to get the game working with my keyboard emulating the Power Pad. I was moderately successful. I managed to land 2 rounds of long jump, but I couldn't quite work out how to get the game to stop freezing if I missed the starting gun in a racing event. I think this is the last Power Pad game for 1987, and hopefully, forever. Back in my Atari 2600 video, I loved a game called Star Master. It was about exploring quadrants of the galaxy, firing at foes, and refueling at space stations. Star Voyager looks to be an NES version of this same concept. Unfortunately, unlike Star Master, I did not enjoy Star Voyager. Well, okay, the opening cutscene is cool, but even after reading the manual and then fiddling around, I wasn't able to get to grips with how to play the game. It has a quadrant map, and the D-pad sets the numbers and letters to the right direction. Holding B will accelerate, all the way up to warp speed, while tapping B will decelerate. But I was never able to get to where I wanted to go. I'm sure there's a simple trick I'm missing in terms of navigation, but seeing that I couldn't figure out travel, find anything to shoot, and I couldn't even dock at a space station, I left it alone. It's funny how simplistic Star Master is, and yet the same concept with a small rise in complexity completely throws me off. I had a smile on my face playing Stinger. From its colorful visuals to its catchy soundtrack, but what cinched my admiration for the game is that Stinger is a shooter made for beginners. Compared to every other shooter I've played on the console, this is a cakewalk. The enemies are leisurely, there is not much to dodge, and there's no landscape to accidentally graze and lose a life on. In fact, in level 1 there's money, question marks, and other oddities to collect on the ground if you recognize them, as they blend into the background. There is also a dual firing mode. The B button fires both ahead and below, and the A button fires hearts straight above. I experimented with this, the hearts traveling through the enemies, so I don't know what they're there for. Level 2 switches things up and is a top-down shooter, the A button firing on the ground this time, but once again, there are no enemies there. Both these mechanics, and maybe more, must be used in later levels. Near the end of the first level, I came to understand the problems of a leisurely shooter. Without sufficient challenge and struggle, gameplay can become dull. I made sure I cleared the enemies, while focusing on searching clouds for goodies, or shooting bells out of them that can be juggled for more points. In level 2, I learned a lot more about the bells. After so many hits, they change color, changing back with the next shot, cycling through different colors that provide different effects. I think the blue makes the game harder because the music changes, but the white and purple change your weapon. The reason I think the blue has an effect on the difficulty is because once I started experimenting with the bells, I was having a tougher time with the game. It was no longer dull. I'm sure you've experienced the gaming version of beginner's luck, where on your first life or attempt you get really far and then you can't seem to ever replicate that success. That happened here. I got to the second boss on my first attempt at the game. I died for the first time during the first boss, trying to hit it with hearts. And that's when I learned there's a mechanic where your spirit leaves your ship, and if you're quick, you can collect it again. I hit a game over on the second boss, continued on stage 2, and whether due to beginner's luck, experimenting with the bells, and thus not paying attention to the enemies, or a combo of the two, I wasn't able to reach the boss again. Nonetheless, I was left with a positive impression of Stinger. What a lovely entry point into what is otherwise an overtly challenging genre. I remember playing Tiger-Heli in the arcades. It seems silly now, but at the time, a game where you could destroy the houses and cars you fly over, even if it only caused a tiny burnt divot in the middle of the roof, well, it made an impression. The NES port also has this. I worried that I wasn't supposed to cause so much destruction, only saving my fire for the tanks, but no, you get points for doing it, so go nuts, I guess. I love the music. It's high octane, which is needed in order to avoid the incoming fire. I thought helicopters are known for their maneuverability, and yet it can't be difficult to fly out of the way of impending doom. Lending a helping hand is a consistent supply of bombs, and, oh yes, the little heli, which will add to your firepower. I picked up 2 of these at one point, and to say the game struggled to handle everything on screen is an understatement. Compared to the port of 1942, this is a vast improvement. The sound doesn't make me want to claw my ears out, and with the use of bombs and the clumps of enemies that rise from the bottom of the screen, the player needs to stay vigilant. I was engaged while playing, and having fun, so I'll rate this game a hell yeah! We're only in the 3rd year of the console, and I'm already impressed by the audio-visual presentation on display. It's like the artists and musicians are flexing, showing off what they can accomplish on this hardware. Winter Games starts off with the opening ceremony, birds flying in the background, Olympic theme blaring. After I selected my country, a snippet of the national anthem played. The music during the figure skating was a nice rendition of a familiar tune, and failing to win speed skating assaults you with this awfulness. The reason I'm spending so much time talking about the presentation is that's where the effort went. For a collection of minigames, the selection is poor. There's only 4. Each is fine, I guess, once you understand how they work. Aerials is your standard do tricks and land properly game. Speed skating has you wrecking your hand spamming left and right on the D-pad. Figure skating is stringing together impressive moves that I could never work out how to execute with any regularity. And bobsled is maintaining speed while learning how to stay upright through each sharp turn. bobsled was my favorite. I was able to make it to the finish line because restarting a failed run in practice mode is quick and easy. As sports minigame compilations go, I found Winter Games a poor example. Yes, it looks and sounds great, but there's just not enough to do or enough fun to be had with what's there. In the 1986 video, I talked about how I loved when a game had so much going on that it caused the NES to slow down. Alpha Mission made me realize that there are limits. The NES can't handle Alpha Mission. It could be on purpose, because I noticed it most prominently when I fired a missile. Maybe the slowdown is to emulate the takeoff and acceleration of the projectile, but mostly it made the game feel sluggish. And in a space shoot 'em up, the last thing you want is for the craft to feel sluggish. It's an interesting game though. The B button shoots all the flying alien craft, while the A button fires missiles to take care of everything on the ground. This is where the power-ups lie. I wasn't seeing much change to my weapons, and I didn't know what collecting energy did, so I went to the manual. Not only can you power up your weapons, but you can change craft. And while it only lasts a short amount of time, the special weapons feel amazing. I really should have kept one of them for the boss, as I was never able to dodge all its attacks. I think as a space shooter, Alpha Mission is pretty cool. I just don't think the NES can handle what it's trying to do. And while still fun to play, I bet the arcade version is a lot better. On the menu of Lunar Pool, you can adjust the table's friction. I guess this is where the lunar comes in. I didn't mess with it. More interested in seeing what else made the game spacey. I thought I had to pocket the balls in numbered order, but once I started playing against the computer, it seems that pocketing any ball gives you points. If you don't pocket a ball, it's your opponent's turn, but there's also a 3-shot limit in the upper right corner, so I wonder if this is to level the playing field when a player is on a hot streak. The controls are pretty cool. You can position your cursor at any point on the table, though there is a length limit, and then wait until the power bar is where you want it to be before letting loose. I wasn't expecting revolutionary physics out of a game from 1987, and there were times where I bemoaned where the balls ended up, but for the most part, I found it easy to work out what shot I wanted to make, and the execution was fair. The novelty comes from the different types of tables as you make your way through the stages. In the first table, I began with breaking the balls, and things progressed like a normal game of pool. After that, the table and pocket configurations shifted around, with balls in predetermined positions, turning it into a competitive puzzle game. This is when Lunar Pool came alive. There might be added novelty in seeing how different friction settings affect different tables, but at least initially, there's enjoyment to be had in seeing what table and pocket configurations Lunar Pool would throw at you next, either against the CPU or a friend. There is no other way to say it. Rad Racer is, well, rad. It looks phenomenal for the time, but that's not the only thing going for it. It's also fun to play. Each checkpoint will add to the timer ticking down, making getting to the finish line a tricky endeavor due to the tight turns and all the other cars on the road. In a twist, hitting a car will not wreck you. It will just slow you down. The only way to crash is to be forced outside the confines of the road, where a lamppost or sign will finish the job. On my best attempt, reaching stage 2, I used the F1 car, hitting the brake every time it started to skid around a turn, letting off the accelerator, trying to make my way around the other cars. And getting to stage 2 was close. Once the timer hits 0, it's not an immediate game over. Your car winds down, and if you happen to pass a checkpoint during that wind down, you get your time back and can continue accelerating. Not only did I wind down over the last few checkpoints, I wound down over the finish line too. It was so close that it made me want to improve my driving skill to make it through with time to spare. The thing is, I felt I was getting better at understanding how to control the car with each attempt, and with the visuals being this impressive, I think I could have easily mastered the game if I had it back when I was a kid. The only thing missing are some groovy tunes blasting on the car radio. I'm coming to understand that the way I judge the merit of a shoot-'em-up is by its variety of special weapons. In Zanac, the alternate firing modes are infinite as far as I can tell, but each numbered weapon collected offers a different advantage, and this is alongside finding orbs to boost your base weapon or triggering screen-clearing bombs. My favorite weapon is number 4, which shoots out a zigzagging orb that will keep floating at the top of the screen, growing smaller until finally disappearing, but then I just send a new orb right back out there. The greatest success I had in Zanac was with this special weapon. It decimates bosses. But it feels like you have to be lucky. There were a couple games where I was killed right off the bat by enemies I should have been able to easily dodge. It can be difficult to know what side of the screen the foes are coming from, and what needs to be done to not ram into them or their bullets. And if you don't have a special weapon you like, the one you start with can cause catastrophe. The orbs have to be directed by pressing down that direction on the D-pad, and trying to aim the orbs and dodge everything on screen was often too much due to drifting in the direction I wanted them to fire in. Still, thanks to these interesting weapons, Zanac is one of the more exciting and enjoyable shoot-'em-ups I've played so far. I think Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is why I love games where bosses take up most of the screen. Even all these years later, the boxers that Little Mac has to face are so full of personality due to their goofy designs, their framing, and their animation. It's a testament to the developers that these figures can be so entertaining to watch and yet so imposing. Now, what keeps the fights exciting is that despite the simplistic controls of headshots, body shots, dodging, blocking, and the uppercut, each boxer is their own puzzle to figure out. Years ago, I latched onto the idea that Punch-Out is actually a rhythm game, man! But I no longer think that. Yes, there is a rhythm to the left and right-handed assault on characters like Don Flamenco or King Hippo, and many special attacks need to be timed correctly to be avoided. But the minute-to-minute gameplay is more about examining tells and learning what shortcuts the player can take to down the opponent as quickly as possible. Since it's been years since I last played Punch-Out, my attempts to find these shortcuts often resulted in failure. I got impatient, and I no longer had the timing down. I've never beaten the game, but I remember being able to get up to either the Sandman fight or the Super Macho Man fight. In the 1985 video, I talked about how I like starting a new game of Super Mario Bros. Just to see how far I can get this time. Making my way through the early boxers of Punch-Out is a similar pleasure. I really should just knuckle down and complete it one of these days. It's still an absolute delight to play. Well, at least Breakthru has decent checkpointing. and the continue option throws you back to the last checkpoint. That's about all the positives I have to say about it. I found this infuriating. It took a few deaths to get used to jumping over the rocks, and then the second pile has these missiles straight afterwards, which are murder to avoid. Literally. Then there's the onslaught of fire from the ever-escalating grouping of enemies. Tanks and ATVs and helicopters, oh my! The second level has you jumping between the high and low sections of a destroyed bridge, and while I thought the game controlled fine, looked fine, and sounded fine, the stop-start nature of the gameplay, with how easy it is to die, and how much trial and error is involved in making progress, negates the joy of the generous checkpointing. I think it was added to the game as a necessity. What struck me immediately is how good the music sounds in the Goonies II. I was not expecting that from a licensed movie game. Even more surprising, it's interesting to play too. The player character has decent jump and attack capabilities, and the idea of entering doors and it changing to a first-person adventure game is certainly a twist. Even better is that the game is generous on checkpointing and death. After so many lives lost, the continue screen appears and will deposit you back where you were, only without the weapons you may have accumulated. Everything important to continuing with the game stays, I imagine. I still had the hammer I found. On the inventory screen there's a map, and it looks like the whole game is one interconnected explorathon. I think I treaded out too far, not first fully exploring the starting areas, but I was so enamored by the change in music and scenery that I wanted to keep going, even if the enemies were getting tougher. Hey, at least some of them dropped hearts. I'm impressed by the Goonies II. Fun to play, look at, and listen to. Not too shabby for a game I only know about because of the Game Grumps Updog joke. Gotcha! The sport uses both the zapper and the controller. It's a paintball capture the flag game. The light gun is needed to shoot the enemies on screen, as well as ammo pickups, while the controller is needed to move across the field. You have to get to the enemy's flag, shoot it, and then get back to your base. If the enemy grabs your flag, they'll be running in the background, and you can shoot them to send it back. The hitbox for the enemies is right in the center, making the ones that are kneeling or lying prone just that bit trickier to contend with. There are 3 levels with different motifs before the game cycles through them again, and I assume they're harder. I think Gotcha, the sport, is novel, looks good, and plays alright, but because it's fairly easy, it can feel boring. Also, the music cuts out every time an enemy has you in their sights, playing this high-pitched scanning sound. Ugh. I've played JRPGs that had less random encounters. Jaws feels like one of those games that could be great with a little rebalancing. There's a fun loop of encountering sea life, slaughtering it to gain shells, and using the shells to buy upgrades, all in the service of taking out the titular monster shark. What keeps things exciting is that Jaws is always swimming around. You can encounter it at any time, but you can't take it out as you are. All you can do is survive. However, this loop and the thrill of encountering and surviving the shark is quickly dulled by how frequent the encounters are, how long they go on for, and how accidentally brushing up against anything will lose you a life and halve your shell count. When I first got a bonus round, I thought it was just the jellyfish putting on a show. The music is right for it. Then when it kept going on, I pressed a button on my controller and started bombing them for extra shells. Jaws is a neat idea and has good presentation, but I think everything needs to be tightened up for the game to really shine and not feel like it's wasting my time. In the 1985 video, I said that a friend of the family's house was where I played pinball, those visits being where I played a lot of the NES games I have fond memories of. I believe it's here I first played the Karate Kid. My memory tells me that it was easy to get past the karate tournament through the first level, and then the Typhoon stage was where I was always defeated. Well, I did make it to the Typhoon stage this time around, but it was not easy to get through the karate tournament. I used up all my crane kicks in the first couple rounds. I had to go check the manual to find out why. The crane kicks and drum punches activate when you press the A or B button on its own. But if you press a D-pad direction along with the button, you'll do another move. So I front kicked my way through the first 2 rounds and crane kick spammed the second 2. I was finally in the proper game. Now, in the proper game, the enemies never stop coming, and it's easy to get stuck in a loop of running into them and getting knocked back. Keeping them at bay is key, and this echoes a thought I had while playing Kung Fu. Why would you ever use the punch when the kick has a superior range? The drum punch special move is pretty cool, but other than that? Anyways, the rest of the game played how I remember it. The jumping is stiff, hazards that fly into you are difficult to dodge, and the bonus stages all have a trick to them. I should have read up about how the dodging hammer works when I was looking through the manual, but hey, at least I was able to catch some flies using chopsticks. It has to be a pretty bad game for me to exclaim, "Oh, thank God," when my timer goes off. Kid Niki Radical Ninja is one of those games. I had such high hopes too. I saw the expressive cartoon sprite and the level map and thought, oh, this could be fun. Even when I first started the game and saw the spinning attack animation, I thought, that's cool. But then when I started playing, it all fell apart. First off, this is one of those games where if you graze an enemy, you die, and there is not generous checkpointing. Secondly, the enemies never stop spawning from the left and the right. Thirdly, the attack, which I learned from the boss is supposed to be a sword, has to be tapped to work, and I found it difficult to move, jump, and attack at the same time. The solution was to use auto-fire and keep the attack button held down at all times no matter what else I was doing. Then it was just a matter of moving slowly and minding the bottomless pits. Well, until I came to the boss. Hitting his giant head will knock the sword out of your hand. His breath will stun you, and it seems only a specific area will register as an attack. Oh, and going to collect my weapon would often get me stuck on the level geometry. Level 2 fared little better, with a whole new collection of annoying enemies to learn how to circumvent. At least the game has a continue option, and I could try again on the new level. Small favors. I think I disliked this so much because I could see the potential. I wonder how many games on this console could have been good or great with just a little bit of retooling. I'm sure I'll mention it every time the thought occurs to me. Star Force confused the hell out of me. When you're playing a shoot 'em up and you see a square with a letter in it, that's a power-up, right? Well, these letters? They can be shot. I still thought they were power-ups, and because I was using auto-fire, I thought I was destroying them before I was able to collect them. But nope, the letters cannot be collected. If you get enough points, a smaller version of your ship will appear on screen. That's an extra life, right? Nope! That will add a new section onto your craft, increasing your firepower. Weird. Aside from that initial confusion, Star Force is a competent enough shooter. You have to be on your toes as the different shapes move in different ways, and it's easy for an enemy to either ram into you or get under you and fire from behind. The bosses are giant shapes named after Greek letters, but I found the hordes of cannon fodder leading up to them more difficult. Earlier, when talking about Zanac, I said that I've come to judge shooters based off the novelty of their special weapons, and Star Force only has an increased rate of fire. It's well made, but I'd rather play other shooters. As a kid, I remember being wowed by the possibilities of Super Pitfall. Oh damn, it looks like you can go anywhere. There's so much to explore. Of course, the reality is that the first ladder is a death trap. Going to the left leads to a dead end, and only the right path leads to more game. Still, that illusion does a lot of heavy lifting. It's not quite enough to overcome the tediously looping music, the stiff jump, and just how easy it is to die, and how quickly the 3 lives are used up. But seeing a pile of treasure still elicits that emotion of, oh cool, I found treasure! Even more impressive is the potential of how much of the game world there is. Later in my play, after about 4 or 5 continues, I was on a ledge overlooking an ever-expanding abyss. I decided, what the hell, and leaped off. I fell a long way, past so many platforms of different types until finally falling in the water. It was here where I discovered some vines, a Pitfall staple. Jumping from vine to vine was somehow both easier and harder than the ones back on the Atari, but at least a failed jump just had me falling in the water again instead of lava, or dying to a miscalculated leap over a bug or scorpion. Now I've been quite charitable to Super Pitfall, which will surprise some of you as it's one of those infamously bad games. I've been trying to see the positives in my play experience, but even after doing that, I cannot recommend it. It feels like a successful run of Super Pitfall would require hours of trial and error to find the optimal path, and then the fortitude to execute it flawlessly. Someone else can take on that challenge. I have other games to play. Wasn't there a joke about how one of the hardest things to do in any NES game is land successfully on the aircraft carrier in Top Gun? If there isn't, there should be. I followed the game's instructions, but it wouldn't let me go up anymore, and I'd end up plunging my jet fighter into the ocean. What do you want from me? At least I'm happy that instead of a flight sim, Top Gun is more about dogfighting. You choose your missiles at the start of the mission, sacrificing power for quantity, and then take to the skies, getting enemy planes in your sights and either locking on with a missile or letting rip with your machine gun. There's limited maneuverability to dodge incoming fire, and the radar lets you know when someone is trying to lock on behind you. Aside from that, there is some impressive plane visuals at the start, and I liked the sound effects. I'd be rating this game higher if I understood how to land properly. Was I expecting too much out of Side Pocket? I thought it would have a more robust physics system to be able to careen the balls off each other. I didn't think I was expecting too much, as Lunar Pool was quite robust in its physics system. Well, it turns out that Side Pocket does have a robust system, but it's all in where you hit the ball, not in how the balls interact with each other. The game has a tutorial, and each lesson showed examples of how hitting a ball in different places provides different effects. The first lesson was always easy to complete, but lessons 2 and 3 don't show you what the game wants from you. I tried something, would fail, and then the computer would show me how it's done properly. Well, how was I supposed to know how to do that, I would say? Oh, and while the effects from hitting the ball in different places are cool, I had no idea how to change the position of the shot when I was actually playing the game. I could have looked in the manual, but by this point, I didn't care. If you're going to play one pool game on the NES from 1987, play Lunar Pool. If you want a second, sure, Side Pocket should suffice. One of my favorite games on the NES is Mega Man 2, but we won't get to that until the 1989 video. Luckily, the spark of what I love about Mega Man 2 is here in the original game. Even if Mega Man does feel like a proof of concept that was iterated on to make Mega Man 2 and 3 as good as they ended up being. We have the classic character design, some fun robot masters, challenging levels, and catchy music. But there are a few things that feel off. First and foremost is the jump. It's a lot stiffer than I remember it. Not only that, but there's a slippery quality to Mega Man's footing that, when combined with the stiffness of the jump, lead to some unenjoyable platforming, especially at the start of Gutsman stage with the platforms over the bottomless pit. And either the programming or additional cartridge chip technology wasn't there yet, because Mega Man is full of slowdown. I expect it in places, but it was happening all the time here. Oh, and instead of life and weapon energy, the enemies also drop point orbs. You get points for clearing the boss too. This first game still had one foot in an arcade ethos. It's annoying, as I spent the majority of Cutman stage low on health, praying for a dropped health pack with each enemy destroyed, and mostly getting only points in return. But despite Mega Man not quite feeling like Mega Man, some extra slowdown, and how silly collecting points for a high score seems to me, I still had a lot of fun. Each stage is short yet challenging, and I thought I remembered the right order to fight the robot masters in, but Cutman's blades did nothing against Gutsman, so I got it wrong. Ah well. One thing about most Mega Man games is that every robot master is technically defeatable with the Mega Blaster. Ah man, playing this just makes me more pumped to get to Mega Man 2 in a couple of videos' time. Wizards and Warriors seems emblematic of Rare's output on this console. Interesting gameplay, good production value, decent controls, and really effing hard. This is one of those games I remember playing at the Nintendo demo kiosks in the middle of the malls my mum would leave me at when she wanted to go shopping. I like the goofy look of the night, and it's a novel experience to be able to jump on tree branches and stumps in both the foreground and background. Combat is another matter. If you're jumping, your sword will automatically skewer enemies, but on firm ground you need to press the B button to waggle the sword back and forth. It's far too easy to get hit and lose health. Luckily, the game has a lot of lives and a generous continue screen that put me right back where I left off upon death. Now, the trick of the game is in collecting the right colored keys to open the right colored chests. Most contain gems, but every now and then you'll find a new piece of armor or a new weapon. It also seems that there's a path of progression through each stage. I had to somehow make my way above the treetops by jumping ever upwards inside the trees themselves. It also seemed, as the game went on, that the amount of enemies harassing me increased. Maybe I was just getting annoyed by having to deal with them as I was searching for the right way to reach the treetops. Regardless, I had fun with Wizards and Warriors. I know it got a couple sequels, so it'll be cool to eventually see what those are like. I think it's a fine game to end 1987 on. And now it's everybody's favorite time, the arbitrary ranking. Woo! We're going bigger this time. Since there are 53 games, I thought a top 10 was insufficient, so we're expanding it to a top 25. And seeing this is the third video in the NES Project, and the largest one so far, I think it's best that I explain to you just how arbitrary my ranking process actually is. You might be saying, Dave, if it's such an arbitrary process, why are you ranking the games at all? And to that, I would respond with, Doi, 'cause it's fun! Let's use the first 3 games I covered in this video as an example. I played Trojan, and I put the name by itself, since there's nothing to compare it to. Then when I play pro wrestling, I have a decision to make. Do I enjoy pro wrestling more or less than Trojan? Based on the answer, I place pro wrestling above or below Trojan. Next game on the list, Slalom. Now, where does it go? Above or below pro wrestling? And if below pro wrestling, above or below Trojan? This process continues until the final game is played. As the list gets longer and more time passes, it gets harder to remember my thoughts and emotions around each game, so the ranking itself becomes more of a feeling. Would I rather play this game than this game? I think it goes around here on the list, but above or below this one. As you can see, it's far from an exact science, and it can lead to some odd placement that surprises even myself. I want to let you know this now, as a top 25 leads to even stranger placements than my top 10s did. I like to think it's part of the fun. Now, let's start ranking. I'll be saying a little about each game as we make our way towards number 1. Can you guess what it is? Lock your answers in now! I think there are a lot of contenders vying for the top spot this year, so let's find out what they are. Starting off at number 25, Mighty Bomb Jack. What a bizarre yet compelling platformer. You don't get to use the bombs promised by the game's title, and it might have the highest jump out of any game on the NES. I like how different level exits lead to different areas. Number 24, Arkanoid. This is on the list due to it being Arkanoid. I don't like this specific port, or more to the point, the emulator couldn't recreate the paddle controller that shipped with the game to my satisfaction, but Arkanoid itself is great. It's Breakout with Pew Pew. Number 23, Side Pocket. Why Side Pocket here? Thanks, silly inexact ranking system. As a pool game, Side Pocket looks nice, and I love the idea of being able to target different areas of the cue ball for different effects. Number 22, Section Z. With how many shoot-em-ups were released in 1987, a few had to make it on the list. Section Z has great music, plays well, and while it could get annoying to keep restarting a route, I found the maze-like structure of choosing which path to follow a fascinating design choice. Number 21, Kid Icarus. Is Kid Icarus a platformer, an RPG, or something else? The answer is yes. Despite its difficulty, the music is great, and who can ever forget being harassed by the Grim Reaper? And number 20, we have Solomon's Key. Yeah, I don't like monsters in my puzzle games, but I like the idea of Solomon's Key. How there are advanced mechanical techniques to work out, as well as plenty of secrets. I think with enough dedication, uncovering what Solomon's Key has to offer could be rewarding. Number 19, Ring King. The computer was massacring me, but I loved how Ring King looked and played. And hey, it's nice to have a boxing game on this top 25 list. I doubt that'll happen again. Wink! Number 18 is Top Gun. Despite the impossibility of landing on the aircraft carrier, Top Gun is an intense, enjoyable dogfighting experience. Number 17, Lunar Pool. The ability to mess with the friction of the table is neat on its own, but what makes me love Lunar Pool is how each level is a different table and ball configuration, turning Pool into a competitive puzzle game. Number 16, Alpha Mission. It seems Alpha Mission is too much game for the NES to handle, but I love how you can choose a different ship to inhabit for a short amount of time, and I like any shooter where your attention is divided between shooting in the sky and shooting on the ground with separate buttons. We're heating up now, folks! At number 15, it's Tiger-Heli. Is this game so high on the list because you can shoot holes in the roofs of houses? No, it's also here because of the little helis you can equip, slowing the game down to a crawl. Number 14, The Legend of Kage. Sometimes presentation and the feeling a game gives you when it clicks is enough to make it special, even when the game itself isn't that good. I really enjoyed my time with it. Number 13 is Slalom. Slalom looks great, is fun to play, and no other game on this list has any skier booty. It's just science. At number 12, Rygar. I don't think any other game on this list surprised me like Rygar did. The presentation is nice enough, as is the novelty of shooting out a shield on a string. But it's the change in perspective and collecting of new items that really made me take notice. Number 11, Zanac. The best special weapons out of any shooter I played from 1987. My favorite was number 4, but sadly I couldn't put Zanac any higher than 11. And now we get to the top 10, the good stuff. Number 10, Stinger. A colorful way to ease into the shoot 'em up genre. The bells mechanic keeps the player on their toes, there's dual firing modes that I'm sure factor in later, and the player has a second attempt at life if they can grab their spirit. This was easily my favorite shoot 'em up of 1987. Number 9 is Wizards and Warriors. Wow, both rare games are in the top 25. Yeah, Wizards and Warriors is difficult, and the combat kinda sucks. But I like how the player can keep continuing where they died from, how the game looks, and most importantly, how the first level sparks my imagination about what the rest of the game could look like. Number 8, The Goonies II. The Goonies II was a pleasant surprise. An interconnected world with adventure game elements and kick-ass music. Konami is 2 for 2 with licensed games based on popular movies this year. At number 7, the 3D battles of World Runner. The jump in 3D World Runner might give Mighty Bomb Jack a run for its money. I love how the game looks, how it feels to play, and now that I'm reminded of it, that catchy theme is going to be in my head for another few days. I'm playing it now so you can enjoy it too. Number 6 is Rad Racer. 2 games designed by Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi in a row. Square was firing on all cylinders this year. Appropriate engine metaphor. I love the way Rad Racer looks and how it feels to control. Each failed attempt made me want to get better at controlling the car, to see if I could get just that little bit further. Top 5 now. We've reached the heavy hitters. I'm sure you can all guess what these games are, but the intrigue is in which order I put them in. Let's find out. Number 5 kicks off with The Legend of Zelda. Over 30 years of Zelda and the original is still a great game to play. It's not higher on the list because of the beeping heart sound and how dangerous and unforgiving it can be exploring the overworld. Or I just like all the other games in the top 5 more. Number 4 is Castlevania. In my review, I said we're able to forgive a difficult game if we're having a good time with it. And that sums up Castlevania nicely. It can be punishing, but that's because it's so deliberate in what it wants from the player. The horror motif and banging soundtrack is just icing on the cake. Number 3, Metroid. Metroid is still so alien to play, Its labyrinths require either a keen mind or some mapping paper, and even when finding yourself in an area too advanced for your current loadout and capabilities, the game remains engaging. I'm amazed just how well it holds up after all this time. Metroid is great. At number 2, we have Mega Man. There's some rough edges to Mega Man compared to its excellent sequels, but the core of what makes the series great shines through in the expressive sprite work, the catchy soundtrack, and engaging robot master fights. Sometimes, I like a first game in a series better than its sequels because the rough edges make it more interesting. But with Mega Man, I prefer the smoothing over that produced Mega Man 2 and 3. Wow, this is a tortured metaphor. Moving on. And my number 1 NES game of 1987 is, drumroll, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Move over Shadow of the Colossus, Punch-Out beat you to the punch. This game is all boss fights punch. Punch! Oh man, I love Punch-Out. The charm of the boxers and how fun it is to try and sneak hits in, to break the dodge and attack rhythms that could get one safely through most encounters. It's still so fun and satisfying to play. And that's another countdown completed. Wow, for the 3rd year in a row, Nintendo takes the number 1 slot in my rankings. And it's been a different designer or director each time. We have competition, folks. Seriously though, it shows how strong Nintendo are at designing games for their own console. But as this list also shows, Capcom and Konami are no slouches either, with Rare, Square, Compile, Taito, and Tecmo taking multiple positions in the top 25. I had never even heard of Compile until working on this video. Will Nintendo continue their reign in 1988? We'll just have to wait and see. And we come to the end of another NES video. I hope you enjoyed the journey. I sure did. I played plenty of titles from 1987 that I hadn't even heard of. I imagine as each year's releases increase in number, so will the amount of such games, and hopefully the amount of pleasant surprises. Most of my top 25 this year were games I had played for the first time. And it's delightful to load up a game I'm unfamiliar with and then fall in love with what it's trying to do. Especially all these years later. The 1988 video is up next. 87 and 88 echo the 85 and 86 videos. 86 had a handful of more releases than 85, and 88 has a handful more than 87. Get all that? 10 more in fact. In the 1988 video, I will be covering 63 games. I think I'll take a break after this video goes out, and then it's time to get back to the NES mines. Speaking of the next video, I'd like to speculate about what I expect to see out of the NES in 1988. Then, when that video's out, you can all come back and see how right or wrong I was. I'll start by saying that I hope to see less games using peripherals. That includes the zapper, but I'm mainly talking about the power pad. Sadly, as this is a Nintendo console, I doubt that'll be the case. I expect more greatness out of the stronger third-party developers that made my top 25. Capcom and Konami, of course, but I'll be keeping my eye on Compile, Rare, Square, Taito, and Tecmo. Hopefully more developers will join this prestigious lineup. Finally, I think Nintendo will continue to dominate their console with the quality of their releases. That one seems like a gimme, but who knows? That coveted Dave's number 1 spot is always up for grabs. I wonder who will take it. I hope you enjoyed joining me on this trek through 1987. I'd love to know what you thought of the video. What NES games from this year do you love or have fond memories of playing? Are there any games you want to try out after seeing me cover them? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to help support this project and everything else I do on the channel, why not become a patron? For as little as $1 a month, you get access to my monthly updates and voting on which games I cover next. Higher tiers include early access to the videos and personal thank yous, like this one. Thanks, Daniel Hobson. You can also buy me a coffee over at Ko-fi. Links for both are in the description and the comment section. Finally, I want to thank both Moby Games and Wikipedia. Without them, compiling these videos would be a heck of a lot harder. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you're all well, are enjoying your gaming, and I wish each and every one of you a wonderful day.